Hey YouTube, it's Master, and today I'm going to be doing my Kaijudo Deckout deck profile, and I wanted to do that because this is what I used at my local tournament this week. Still only 4 people. That's just starting up, and word hasn't gotten around about it too much, so we'll try to get more people in when we can, but for now it's just the 4 of us, and this deck works really well. I originally didn't think I was going to put it on YouTube because it's kind of unfair to play this deck. Especially at this point with what cards are out, it's really overpowered, I would have to say. And it is a light-dark deck that focuses on decking people out. And I'll go over the strategy behind that as I go and at the end, but for now I'm going to get into it. And to start off, there are going to be 18 blockers, and they're just standard blockers, so gonna have, hang on, make sure you guys can see these better. Gonna have the 3 Grandeur Tower Keepers, huge blocker, 9,000 that only costs 6, definitely worth playing it. After that, the 3 Keeper of Twilight, so they're 6,000 for 5. Those 6 blockers that I just went over, these guys, are the ones that get around the things like Tornado Flame and Bone Blades and Return to the Soil, as well as Ice Blades. So after those, the rest of them can be hit with any of that, so it's kind of unfortunate, but 6 of those is plenty, especially with how many blockers you put out in this deck. Got the 3 Keeper of Clouds. Got 3 Star Lantern, great blocker. Got 3 Sunstock Seed. Got 3 Dream Pirate. And that's it for the blockers. 18 blockers in all. And that's most of the strategy, is to just swarm the field with blockers, because your opponent won't really get past it. So the next part of the strategy is control, because your opponent is obviously going to try to control you back. Like, you start spamming blockers to your field, you've got just so many blockers. They're obviously along the way going to try to kill off some of your blockers or whatever that you have. So they're going to kill stuff, and you might be left with less blockers than you want. And that's going to happen. You're going to have to deal with it. And the way you deal with it is to control their creatures so that they don't have as many options as you have blockers. And they'll be controlling your field, and you control theirs back so that you maintain control of the situation. So, to start off the control section of the deck, I've got 2 Razorkinder. Razorkinder, I guess it's technically called. He's just standard removal, I guess. I only use 2 because I have plenty of other ways to get rid of things, and I don't need a creature. He's nice to have, though, and I'll get to part of that later. Obviously 3 Terror Pit. What Darkness deck doesn't run 3 of these? But, you know, good removal, removes anything, especially late game when your opponent's trying to swarm you with finishers, which isn't too much of a problem so long as they haven't removed all 3 of your Grandeur, because you can start to suicide block and attack them later, or whatever you need to do. 3 Death Smoke. This deck has no mana acceleration, which means Razorkinder isn't as reliable because you don't always have 7. You should have 7 at some point later in the game, but the 3 Death Smoke really are a lot more prevalent in this deck, and it's just more removal. On top of that, we've got the 3 Bone Blades, because this thing is just another way to spend less mana and kill off an opponent's creature, and that's really helpful, as I said, in controlling the situation. Finally, I've got 3 Keeper of Dawn to recycle any of the previous 9 spells that will kill creatures, so that later in the game I'm not out of either cards in my hand or spells to kill the opponent with. So very useful. Plus it's another creature that forces your opponent into some situations they don't want to be in, which I will cover when I get to the end of the deck. The next portion of the deck is discarding your opponent's hand, and what that does basically is it forces the opponent to make hard choices and just be at a general disadvantage and be backed into a corner. Because when early game your opponent has had to discard 2-3 cards by their 5th turn, they've started top decking and only have 1 card coming in per turn, and they've got 5 mana or so. And that's really devastating to people. Less so to water, but still it hurts them too, because they might only have 2 or 3 cards in their hand, and you can just discard all 3 at once for, 6 mana if you use 3 Spectre Claws. A little more likely to have to spend 8 to discard 3 cards from their hand, but even then, it's still really good to control your opponent's hand size, because it just takes away choices. It's really good, and especially against decks that don't have water, this will really devastate them. Fire Nature gets shut down because it can't drop big finishers on you, and you've got blockers, so basically it's just top decking and playing, because your opponent knows, well, if I top deck a card and keep it in my hand, he'll discard it, because he's got to have more discard power in his hand right now. So that really forces them to top deck and play, or if they top deck something they can't afford to play, they typically put it in their mana zone. So it really slows your opponent down, backs him into a corner, and that's, for the most part, that's it. Even control decks do this. This is how I beat a lot of people, is I get them with no hand and less mana than they ideally would have. So, we'll go right into this section of the deck. Obvious, the 3 Fumes, the 3 Ghost Spy, and the 3 Spectre Claw. And to wrap up the deck, a little bit unrelated to the rest of it, is 3 a.k.a. Winged Justice. So let me quickly explain this a little bit, and then I'll get into a few more things I haven't mentioned about the strategy of the deck. So a.k.a. does a few general things for this deck. He makes the opponent, if they don't already know that you're running Deckout, he would force the opponent to think, oh, there's his finisher, this is how he's going to push for game, and he's just got a lot of blockers to defend himself, and he's trying to control my field so that I don't finish him before he finishes me. Standard, control-based deck strategy. Where they go wrong with that is they have to remove him, because they say he's going to finish me off with that. That's like 4 shields right there, plus another creature, because you get to swing once, attack, double break, untap, and attack again. That's 4 shields with 2 creatures, and one of them isn't even a double breaker. So imagine how devastating this gets once you have a couple more creatures on top of a.k.a.'s. They just can't do anything to it because they have to kill it. And what that does is that takes their control attention away from your blockers. Because this thing isn't going to go away easy, they're going to have to use Terror Pit or Root Trap or something big that could have killed Grand Gur. And he's the biggest blocker we have in this game. And he can even block Terra Dragon Regarion Doom. And he wouldn't survive, but it would get rid of the Terra Dragon. By the way, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'd wait and control the Terra Dragon out of there, plus, in that situation, Terra Dragon. Probably removed one of these, so you'd have to have two to start off with. But, it takes the control focus away from your blockers, which means the Deckout strategy wins. And what it does allow you to do is push for game, because sometimes you're not going to be able to deck the opponent out. What this deck relies on is the fact that it's a 44 card deck, and you can just wait for the opponent to deck themselves out, because what they'll do early game is try to rush you. They'll try to do what other control decks would do. The nature decks that have nature in them will put cards into the mana zone from the deck, therefore making it so that even if they have more cards in their deck than you to start with, they're going to start decking out faster than you. And that's a big thing in this game. because this deck is only 44 cards, and otherwise might not deck someone out if they're running a bigger deck. Water decks will draw a lot, and for the most part I'd have to say most decks at this point are either going to be 40 cards and not accelerating, 40 cards or accelerating, and accelerating rather, or bigger decks that have a lot of draw power or mana acceleration power that will end up decking faster, or decking out faster than you would. The only thing you have to be careful about is in some games, you don't want to activate your Ghost Spy's effect to draw. That part is optional, but your opponent does have to choose and discard a card from their hand. So you don't always want to draw with this. It depends on the situation. But with that out of the way, Alcadius does open up that door to actually attack for game. Because if they see Alcadius and recognize this is a Deckout deck, I need to kill his blockers so I can get in there and win. Keep in mind they're probably forced into a top decking situation. So whatever is going to happen, you're going to see coming from a mile away. They can't just save up cards in their hand and start playing a lot of things and attack right there for game. You're controlling things. You're not just letting things get out of hand so that if they kill off one or two of your blockers at one point, you're going to lose the game in that one turn. It's not going to happen. So, Alcadius does do its job in that, but make sure you don't attack shields unless you can get game, and it's pretty safe to assume that if they have 2 or 3 shield triggers, you're still going to survive. Because the biggest mistake you can make is giving them a hand after you've already gotten rid of it, because that could be very devastating. Or if it looks like in a few turns down the road they might be able to kill you if they keep attacking or something, it's something to consider to try to take 2 turns to finish them, but typically you want to take 1. And the last thing that Alcadius really brings is the fact that you're going to be able to swing for game, the opponent will be forced into a few corners, like, which do I destroy, the blockers, the Alcadius, what do I do? And he's just overall allows you to control creatures better by being able to attack the creatures with Alcadius to kill them off if they try to swing. Because I don't always block, don't get me wrong, sometimes I let them give me hand. I typically try to keep 2 or 3 shields just in case something goes wrong, and mostly early game is when my shields go, but sometimes late game I'll let them go through. And stuff like Keeper of Dawn will be able to attack and then be untapped. You could even attack with your blockers and untap. So he brings that to the table. He's just all around really good to have, and he does do that for you. Forces you to have, well, gives you 2 win conditions at once, and your opponent has to choose which one's more of a threat at the time. So that's really good, and it just gives you a win condition against decks that you're not going to be able to deck out, which is important to have so that you don't lose games like that. A few other things to note. I've already gone over the fact that you don't always want to use this effect, only when it's clear that you are ahead in cards in the deck and are not going to lose that position. Dream Pirate can help you attack for the game, so he is a very nice blocker to have around since he can attack. But the rest of the blockers are definitely really nice too, especially these ones, the Grandgurs and the Keeper of Twilights. So I said I'd get back to a few of the control aspects of the deck. Obviously he helps in the push for game. These do too. All of the creatures that could attack for game in this deck do help to distract the opponent from the blockers and their being able to attack you. So basically they have to choose which condition they think is the bigger threat. So they have to either target these guys to kill them, or target some of these guys to kill, all the blockers and such. It really just depends on what they think is the bigger threat, and in the end, this deck having that dual win condition set up really forces the opponent to make choices that in the end don't save them anyway. They can't really stop everything in this deck. This deck, as of right now, has dominated everyone it's played. My friend did randomly start beating me once or twice, just one time, but after that, it went back to dominating him. I think I was just playing it stupid, because I was a little bit annoyed at the time, but we'll see how this performs, and for now, I think it's doing really good. Obviously, your first target is probably going to be Terror Pit, if not Death Smoke. Just really good to have those as an option. But if you have to, and you're forced into it, maybe you have 9 mana, grab one of these, activate it right away to kill off a creature if you're forced into a situation like that. But overall, this deck hasn't even lost a round to anyone that it's played, except the one time I just said where I was losing to my friend. It's really unfair to play this deck. I think it's amusing at first to play it, just as a note. I think it's really amusing to play it at first, because you're, like, reacting to your opponent, but I played it for the 3 rounds at my tournament, and dominated with it, which was nice. I won a Bat Breath Scared Horrible in a pack, and by the way, my friend that won 2nd place got one in his 1 pack, too. So, that was pretty cool. But, I mean, it got boring. This deck takes a while to win, because obviously you have to let the opponent deck out or attack for game, which I think I did once. The opponent had like 4 or 5 cards left in their deck, and I just decided to finish it. One of my opponents quit game 2, because they were like, there's no way I can win, I'm running Fire Nature, I have 4 cards in my mana zone, and I've got no cards in my hand. I can't win this game, what am I gonna do? Draw and Heal of Flame the Assaulter and suicide attack into a Keeper of Twilight for nothing? I mean, he just scooped the game. And this deck is really unfair. I don't know if I'll play it at another tournament or not, because although I like winning, I like being fair to the people I play, and I don't like annoying people like that, and it's kind of boring. But overall, if you guys are looking for a good competitive deck at this point, this is one way to go. It's very good. You could tweak it a little bit, but I think this is pretty much perfect. I would run stuff like Skeeter Swarmer for an extra set of blockers to bump it up to 21 blockers or something, but the thing dies, so it's really not worth it. I've got early enough blockers for early game, and they're not going to kill me by attacking early game. What that's going to do is just give me either cards in my hand or free destruction for the cards that they already have out. And I haven't encountered any problems. This deck has, as I said, completely wiped the floor with, dominated, destroyed, massacred, whatever you want to call it, everyone it's played. And they haven't really had much of a chance to do anything to it. So that's just how it's tested, and my test notes in my book of deck lists is so unfair, a quote from my friend that I tested it with, and it really is so unfair. So I leave you with that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and feel free to comment on how you like it, how you guys think, what do you think about it, and if you would actually want to play it, or if you think it's just too boring, stupid, and unfair. So, likes, favorites, that kind of thing, I guess, are always appreciated. I do like to see likes. I don't even know how to judge how many favorites there are, but whatever. And new subscribers make me happy. So if you guys are into Kaijudo, go ahead and subscribe. I'm sorry this video took so long, but I did have a lot to explain about this deck that is just massively good and unfair for Kaijudo. And I hope you guys enjoy it, and some of you might play it. Hopefully I don't face you, because I haven't tested the mirror match, but I believe it would probably just end up being a stupid game anyway. Like, whoever goes second loses, maybe? Alright, so thanks for watching, guys, and have a nice day.